Movie footage and the music used in What Is owned completely by copyright holders. Sarcastic Robin claims no ownership of footage and only uses it for commentary, education, and criticism under fair use. What Is not a substitute for the real thing. Buy the Blu-ray, DVD, or digital copy or stream where you can. Support the arts.
Born in July 30th, 1970 in Westminster, London, England, Christopher Nolan, influenced by science fiction films of the time, such as the works of Ridley Scott, Star Wars, Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. He would take his father's Super 8 camera and film his action figures. In 1998, he would release his first feature film, The Following, and get a following of his own. But this isn't a biography of him. Today, we ask, what is Christopher Nolan and his movies? One of those directors highly regarded as one of the best, especially in the big blockbuster scene, because let's face it, he is. Nolan has a very specific and unique feel to his films that are over the top, but still grounded in their own way, providing a film experience that you don't get often. His name can draw in a lot of crowd, especially with a film like Oppenheimer, which surprised everyone and almost made $1 billion in the box office, which is huge for a rated R film, especially one that is 3 hours long. But of course, he wasn't always the director that was regarded like this. It would take several years for him to get to the status that he is now. From a student film such as The Following, to a film trilogy that is often regarded as one of the greatest comic book movies of all time, to a movie that made everyone go, huh, when they saw it, and underrated it. And again, to the film that took everyone by surprise and blew everyone figuratively and literally away with Oppenheimer.
So starting back at the beginning, Nolan was an English literature major in University College London, specifically so he could use their film facilities, and did something unrelated to film so he could have a different take on things. He mostly did some short films, namely Lawrence from '96. It was shown at Cambridge Film Festival and was considered UCL's best, but has been removed from public viewing due to unknown reasons. He also did one named Doodlebug from '97. In the mid-90s, he tried getting his first feature, Larry Mahoney, but ultimately scrapped it at the time. You see, at the time, he had a lot of rejections to fund his projects, just in general having a hard time getting things off the ground. In his own words, there's a very limited pool of finance in the UK. To be honest, it's a very clubby kind of place. Never had any support whatsoever from the British film industry. This, he was able to conceive his first actual feature film, Following, a 1998 film following a young man who watches people and follows them from afar, who falls into the wrong thing and goes into the criminal underworld. The process of making this film is actually really neat to me, considering it only costed £3,000, which costs like $5 at least in US dollars? Most of the cast and crew in this film are literally just friends of Nolan's. Jeremy Theobald, the man who plays the young man, yes, the character is called Young Man, co-produced this film with Nolan and has only acted in Nolan's films as minor characters. The film took about a year to film, having been filmed on the weekends when the cast and crew were not at their day jobs. The plot of the film is something Nolan uses quite a bit in his films, non-linear device, which means the film plays out of order, as to create more mystery, which for a noir film is pretty useful. In an effort to preserve film stock, the scenes were extensively rehearsed as to not use more than needed. The ways he used what was available to him to make it as inexpensive as possible is really commendable, and honestly, it's crazy to look at this film and to look at something like he made today and look at how far he has come.
And while I am incredibly impressed with the production of the film and how he made it was very inspiring, I just don't like this movie. The plot's very boring, visually it doesn't really stand out, and it feels like everything modern Nolan does right, just done wrong here. But I am very impressed with production, and everything Nolan went through cannot be discredited. I just don't like the film. While I think that, not everyone else did, as it did very well in the critical audiences of the film festival sphere. This film brought Nolan onto higher pastures, and those pastures are Memento, the 2000s film that really broke him out as the director people want his eyes on. His brother Jonathan pitched an idea of a man with anterograde amnesia using notes to solve his wife's murder. Jonathan put it in a short story titled Memento Mori. Christopher turned that into a screenplay.
Nolan thought of the idea to tell the story Memento backwards. So you know what that means. The plot is told using a non-linear device. How it plays out is really interesting because you are presented with both timelines side by side and have to figure out the story as you go along. Originally, the lead role of Leonard was played by Brad Pitt, who had an interest in the screenplay but had to pass due to scheduling conflicts. But the script caught wind of one Guy Pearce, who was extremely excited about this film and personally called Nolan himself. The film took significantly less to be filmed than following, as this was an actual production that was produced by New Market Films and had an actual budget of $5 to $9 million, which for a film that got 41 mil in the box office is insane. There's a version of the film on the Blu-ray where you can watch it in chronological order, which is the black and white scenes followed by the colored scenes. But just watching it in the way it was originally thought of to be watched is really fascinating and adds a whole nother level to the story. If you couldn't tell, this is like my favorite Nolan film. It is massively interesting and incredible to watch. Guy Pearce is mesmerizing to watch as Leonard. You can really believe in his anterograde amnesia. You start to sympathize with him even though you learn that he isn't necessarily that great of a dude. But he's also someone who is manipulated in ways he can't comprehend. It is a fascinating watch of a man trying to solve his wife's murder and learning stuff that happens to him that he will never understand. And to see him putting those notes down for himself after we are first shown them is really neat. I genuinely love this film, and I am absolutely not the only one. Nolan gained many accolades for this film, including nominations for an Academy Award and Golden Globes for Best Screenplay. It was praised by critics and audiences alike and led Nolan and his wife to create the production company Syncope Inc. Critics and audiences aren't the only ones who liked Memento, because Steven Soderbergh went over to Warner Bros. And was like, hey guys, this kid Chris Nolan, you should hire him. And they brought him on to create 2002's Insomnia.
Oh boy. I'm gonna preface this next section with, I don't like this movie. Big red letters. I don't like this movie. Man, only 3 movies in, and I only talked about one movie I actually genuinely liked. Don't worry, after this movie is one I do like. And then one I don't like. Don't worry, after that, smooth sailing, I swear.
Okay, so this film follows Al Pacino and his partner going to a town in Alaska where the sun is out 24 hours to investigate a murder. When his partner is murdered, he goes down a rabbit hole while having insomnia and meets Robin Williams' character, who saw Al do something. I just finished watching this movie as I'm writing this. I genuinely don't know what to say on it. It really does not feel good. Originally, Jonathan Demme was supposed to direct this, so it just doesn't feel like a Christopher Nolan film. I just don't like this. Any sense of style pizzazz Nolan's films hold is not in this. It feels like they've tried making a David Fincher film, and Nolan just didn't feel it. Robin Williams is at least incredible in this film. He is fully in character in this, and just oozes creep and murder. Al Pacino feels like he did not want to be here. Like he wanted to be in Jack and Jill more than this. At least in that, we got him doing a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. I get Nolan thinks this is his most underrated film. I get that it's his first studio film, but by God, I just do not like it. Prestige, a 2006 film about Hugh Jackman magician being really mean to Christian Bale. So this is an adaptation of a 1995 novel by Christopher Priest, something Nolan himself read while in London during Memento's release. His brother Jonathan helped write the script for it, being a collaborative effort between the two for 5 years. Nolan really wanted to provide emphasis on the magical aspect of the story, which is something you can really feel in it in its 3-act structure, using the whole illusion aspect of the film, the pledge, the turn, and the prestige, to turn the film on you with minor use of non-linear to try and trick you. He wanted to do it after wrapping up Insomnia, but production on Batman Begins was ramping up, so he had to hold off on it. Once the film came out, Nolan tried getting Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman on board, and the production on Prestige started to ramp up. Using Universal backlots, real theaters in Los Angeles, a set he made in his own basement, and more, Nolan created a very convincing and still magical Victorian-era England. Like I've said, there is a certain magical feeling to this film. The entire film feels like a performance from a magician being played out, and you're learning bits and pieces of the entire mystery as it goes on, often going back to multiple points in the film to just show you something new that you didn't notice.
This film began the trend of Christopher Nolan's less straightforward films having a twist in them to mess with you. This one has 2 whole twists in the film that are slowly built up, and you begin to question what's real and what's a trick being played onto you. It's a truly genius film that I love, and it does not hold your hand at all during the film. Critics were mixed on this, as some thought it was great and some thought it was a cheap, cheaty movie that was not good, I guess. I don't know. Have they seen the film, like actually watched it? This is a really good movie, and I don't understand how they came across that. Anyway, Batman.
After Batman and Robin famously failed horribly, Warner Bros. Straight up closed any notion of a new Batman film, so they met Nolan and hired him to create a new reboot, which Nolan very gladly decided to hop on. Working with David S. Goyer, who wrote the script, the two aimed to create a darker, more grounded Batman origin story, which at that point had not really been explored, wanting to create a better relationship between the audience and Batman/Bruce Wayne, using such stories as Batman: The Long Halloween, Year One, and The Man Who Falls as inspiration to tell the story of a Bruce Wayne with humanity and tell his story. The goal of this film was to create a film Nolan would have wanted to have seen when he was a kid, going the full route of creating a large sweeping film, getting a pre-Prestige Christian Bale to join him as Bruce Wayne. The story is presented in a very personal way, getting to see who Bruce Wayne is and tell his story. You can experience his pain, his growth, be with him every step of the way, from his hero's journey to finding Ra's, to coming home, to becoming Batman, fighting Scarecrow and Ra's at the end. You see it all and experience it all. Too bad I didn't like the movie though. Yeah, this movie has a lot of issues that I have with insomnia. Feels very subdued and very much like a studio film. It just doesn't have that oomph that Nolan's films are known for. I think all of his pre-Prestige films where he actually finds his footings and rooted in a stumbling way, trying to grow and just work. Of course, this film is a technical marvel. The use of miniatures and just in general how this film is made is incredible. You can tell Nolan has a deep love for Batman as a character and was truly interested in doing a unique take on him, but just doesn't shine in this. I know it's a big hot take to say anything negative about the Dark Knight trilogy at all, especially this movie, but I genuinely do not like this movie. Even since I was a kid, I just didn't like it. It's very boring and at points just doesn't get what Batman is about. But luckily after that we got 2008's The Dark Knight, which is often cited as one of the most influential and important comic book movies of the 2000s. And it's true, David S. Goyer and Nolan are back to write the screenplay, this time creating a story where Harvey Dent is the central protagonist caught up in a war of jokes and bats, as a new player in the crime scene has shown up to stir things around. Heath Ledger was a very controversial pick for Joker, as he was deemed inappropriate for the character by critics and fans alike. Of course, that all changed once they saw him and his performance, and immediately viewed him as one of the greatest performances in comic book movie history. A truly haunting and hilarious character. Of course, Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent is what I truly love from this film, portraying a tragic character who loses everything and only wants revenge on everything in the whole world that failed him, providing a performance that sticks in my mind every time I watch it, and one I want to see more in different contexts, and is in general my ideal version of Harvey Dent. The scale of The Dark Knight is interesting too, going from a wide sweeping but still personal film to one that blows you away, being the first film in history to be shot on IMAX cameras and specifically for IMAX. You really feel the scope of that. This is also the first time Nolan did a sequel to his film. And other than The Dark Knight Returns to end the trilogy, the only time he has. He didn't even think of doing a sequel to Begins originally. He didn't think it would be successful in the way that it was.
I really like how this movie works. From the cold open to the fact that Christian Bale spends most of the movie as Batman and not Bruce, to emphasize the fact that this is not Bruce's story. It just all works in a way that no comic book film has been able to since either.
Speaking of which, 2012's The Dark Knight Rises comes along, once again written by Jonathan Christopher and David S. Goyer. This time it is influenced by Batman stories Nightfall, The Dark Knight Returns, and No Man's Land, which all three are just incredibly prevalent in the plot. As much as I love this movie, there just isn't that much to talk about. After Ledger's death, a lot of plans for the third film were scrapped out of respect, and Nolan was very hesitant to return for the third, but eventually was convinced to come on, originally wanting to have the Riddler be the main villain and Leonardo DiCaprio to play him. Nolan wanted to do something different and have a villain that is vastly different from the previous two. Only Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow is the only villain that manages to be in all three films, being only basically a stooge to the main villain's plot. Which brings us to Bane, the man who defeated the Batman, expertly played by Tom Hardy. A lot of Bane adaptations fall in one specific way. They assume that he is dumb because he is a beast, but in reality he is a genius that rivals Bruce Wayne himself. And Tom Hardy portrays that beautifully. From the moment you meet him or even hear about him, you are met with a man who clearly knows more, has more planned than you can ever know. Goofy voice and all. Unfortunately, he is immediately sidelined for the twist of Talia al Ghul, played by Marion Cotillard, who I would say seems smart and cunning, but is the clumsiest twist you'll ever see because it makes literally no sense to have. Also, the Robin reveal with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character in this? What was that about?
These films really jump-started Nolan into the director status that he has now, and even Christian Bale into the A-list actor that he is now, which is insane to think about. But you have to remember, by the time Batman Begins came out, Nolan only really had 3 films out, and only one of them's actually studio-based. He really became something special out of the gate, and it's incredible. The Dark Knight trilogy is something to behold. Anyway, have you ever dreamed something, and you fell, and you woke up, and you go, whoa, it felt like I fell, but it was just a dream. So did Christopher Nolan. And because The Dark Knight did so well, Warner Bros. Went to him and said, bro, you could do whatever you want now. And so he did. He made 2010's Inception, which is a movie idea he's had rattling around in his brain for years, and he now finally can make it.
Originally, it was a horror film titled Dream Stealers that he presented to Warner Bros. After making Insomnia, but decided he needed more experience before he could even think of tackling the endeavor. So he shelved it and got that experience with Batman Begins, Prestige, and The Dark Knight, and worked on the project until he decided he was ready. Been trying to work with him multiple times for many years, Christopher Nolan recruited Leonardo DiCaprio because Leo was interested with the concept of the film. The plot of the film being that Leo's character Cobb brings together a team to do a heist in someone's dream to dissolve the person that hired them's competitor's company. A very mind-bending and interesting film that Nolan insisted on having as much practical effects as possible, using a lot of miniatures and different sets. Honestly, like much of his films, Inception is absolutely a technical marvel. His creative use of CG and practical is amazing to watch and see his vision come alive. It was a very critically successful film, being praised a lot, and is still considered one of his best films. It is also said that the Satoshi Kon film Paprika was an inspiration for this film, but honestly, they're nothing alike that much outside of the Dream Machine thing. And also, Paprika is one of the greatest films of all time.
So, I really like Inception. It's a technical marvel, like I said, and it's really fun to watch. This, along with the Batman films, really showed the world what kind of director Christopher Nolan was, and it began the road of getting him into beloved director status. This is even more shown by
Interstellar a 2014 film starring Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, and Jessica Chastain about a farmer that goes into space to find a habitable planet outside our solar system. Another film that feels like a technical marvel with its use of practical effects and CG, using a lot of interesting techniques with miniatures. A lot of the visual effects for the film were created pre-production, using digital projectors behind the actors rather than using green screen. Basically, doing the volume before Disney got that and beat it like a dead horse.
A big thing about this film is how scientifically accurate it is. Nerd alert! Yeah, it's cool that Nolan worked with scientists to make this as scientifically accurate as possible without it interfering with his story. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson thought it was cool. But who cares about it?
Check out McConaughey stop a giant station in space after Matt Damon blew it up. Oh, that's another thing. When I watched this for the first time, I was legit surprised Matt Damon because I did not know he was in this film. Kind of funny, I think. Anyway, this film did pretty well when it was released, garnering $681 million on a budget of $165 million, with an overall positive reception from critics and audiences alike. This was one of those movies in 2014 you heard everyone talking about. It was crazy how this giant space movie about time travel and stuff garnered such a response. Maybe not, but it was the most pirated film in 2014, so that's pretty cool.
For a little while, Nolan wasn't actually directing after Interstellar. Instead, he was working on the art of preserving films and making sure lesser filmmakers get their art distributed. Working with his production company, SyncVideo, he helped release a theatrical tour of Brothers Quay animation films, along with directing a documentary short titled Quay in 2015, released along with the Blu-ray release of those films. He also helped be an executive director for a small-time director known as Zack Snyder, working on some art indie films. I think it's like called Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, whatever. I don't.
But once Nolan was back in the director's chair, he comes out with the 2017 film Dunkirk, a historical thriller about the escape of Allied soldiers in Dunkirk. Nolan actually conceived the concept of the film in the mid-90s as he and Emma Thomas sailed the English Channel, considering the idea to improvise the entire film, but Emma convinced him to write it instead, and then in 2015 he wrote a 75-page screenplay, shorter than most of his previous work. The story is structured in 3 parts, all taking place at the same time, slowly building together into the final act where they all culminate and meet together. The story of the actual soldiers in Dunkirk desperately trying to escape any way they can. A small fishing boat going to help said soldiers, and a pilot in a constant dogfight, and is that Tom Hardy? Chris, stop putting Hardy everywhere. Anyway, the film feels very real, holding a sense of tension from the moment we see our main character, played by Finn Whitehead, running away from gunfire. Harry Styles is in this as his debut acting role. He's good in this, but also it was really big news that he was in this, and I feel like it was overblown with his impact on the overall film. He's in it 10 minutes tops, at least any focus on him. A large portion of the film is actually filmed on the beach where the evacuation took place, and Nolan tried to film it as close to the date of the event as he could, minimizing the need for CGI. Cardboard cutouts of military vehicles and background soldiers were made to create an illusion of large crowds. As always, Nolan's production of this is very masterful, creating a very grand-scaled film while still having a lot of smaller-scaled work on it. Hans Zimmer's score really helps that, having a sound that truly makes it grand. Dunkirk premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, the first of Nolan's films at a festival since the following 19 years prior, receiving very good praise from critics, often being called Nolan's best film and one of the greatest war films ever made. While I don't think either is exactly true, this is my favorite war film. Audiences loved the film as well, culminating in the box office of $525 million on a budget of $100 to $150 million. Warner Bros. Chose to market this film as a usual summer blockbuster instead of a period piece, and clearly it worked in their favor.
One of Nolan's biggest ideas that he's been thinking of for a decade or so. Now he realized he has enough directorial experience to make it. So in 2014, he began working on a little science fiction movie known only as 10 Ants. Oh, I mean Tenet.
Christopher Nolan went into this movie with the basis that he wanted to do something that is based in science but not scientifically accurate, working with Kip Thorne again, only to help him with different properties of science to make it more believable. For casting for the film, the leads, played by John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, were only allowed to read the screenplay while in a locked room to truly set in the whole theme of this being a spy. Following John David Washington's character, only referred to as the protagonist, as he aims to find the origins of objects that move backwards in a secret organization named Tenet. The palindrome name referencing the fact that this movie starts and ends with the beginning of a story. I absolutely love this movie. The way Nolan uses his abilities to create a non-linear storytelling and make a story that literally moves in its own way. The way you see multiple things at the start of the movie that show up again later to explain those things when you first saw them. Or how the soundtrack amazingly made by Ludwig Göransson would literally play off the story, creating even more depth to it. It is simply incredible how much Nolan worked on this film and how well it paid off. While I agree it's honestly one of Nolan's more out there films compared to literally his entire filmography, it's still one of the most genius and well thought out of his films also. It's a real shame that this is one of those films that got delayed because of the 2020 pandemic of COVID-19. 3 times in fact, but despite that, it was one of the films that was detrimental to the return of movie theaters after this shutdown, garnering roughly $367 million. Enough. This film is canon to the lore of Fortnite, as they ran a marketing promotion at the time where you can watch the trailer and also get a skin of the protagonist. This was the beginning of events in the game with trailer premieres. This is a very funny and very important part of this video.
Critics and audiences alike were like, what did we just watch, and why can't I hear the movie when the movie first came out? But they're all wrong. This movie did not deserve the 69% it got on Rotten Tomatoes. It's very good. But this next movie, they loved. That's for originally announced in 2009 and eventually brought to life by director Greta Gerwig. 2023's Barbie is not the movie we're talking about. No, instead, we're going to be talking about the other greatest movie that came out in 2023, Oppenheimer, released July 21st, 2023, or as I would like to call it, Nolan Friend Reunion, because oh my god, everyone is.
Of course, we have Cillian Murphy, who has been in the most of Nolan's films, along with Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, Kenneth Branagh, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, and just so much more. The lead up to this film is very interesting, as it was basically in a 20-year development when Sam Mendes was interested in doing an adaptation of the autobiography of Robert J. Oppenheimer, American Prometheus. When that didn't materialize, the rights were floating around until 2015 when actor James Woods helped set up a meeting between one of Nolan's producers and J. David Wargo who had the rights to adapting the autobiography. When Charles Roven gave Nolan the autobiography is when the ball started rolling. Nolan had already been interested in doing a movie about Oppie, but what really pushed him is when Robert Pattinson, at the end of the production of Tenet, gave Chris a copy of Oppenheimer's speeches and decided to make a movie based on the before and after Oppenheimer made the atomic bomb, citing the speeches showing how much the man dealt with that decision. Now, we already talked about the pandemic, but when it was going on, Warner Brothers was doing a simultaneous release schedule of films, delaying films left and right. Nolan didn't exactly like their decisions and was frustrated with them, eventually ending his partnership with them. And when he fully decided to write the film, he shopped around with studios. Eventually he landed with Universal, and they helped him fully produce it and stick with full theater releases. The film itself followed something a lot of Nolan's films have, a non-linear storytelling, jumping from multiple points in history, namely many years after the dropping of the bombs, and Oppenheimer's life leading up to the creation. Those pieces of his past are told during a hearing of his in which his security and Q clearances are up in air as he has to prove his loyalty to the United States. Production of the film is probably my favorite part, as Nolan went full into this, even fully recreating a lot of 1940s Los Alamos, and a lot of the sets to be as accurate as possible. Nolan used a combination of IMAX 65mm film and large format 65mm form, and was the first to use black and white IMAX film, which were specifically created for this film. One of my favorite aspects of the production of this film is that Nolan used actual explosions for atomic bomb testing. My favorite scene in the film, as I saw this in IMAX for my first time, and I quite literally was blown away. And when news of that broke out on the internet, everyone assumed that Nolan actually set off an atomic bomb, which would have been hilarious, and I believed it until he came out and said, "It's flattering that people would think I would be capable of something as extreme as that on the one hand, but it's also a little bit scary." Overall, Christopher Nolan really went full out on this film, showing genuine love and compassion for the story he was trying to.
I want to talk about Barbenheimer, but firstly, I want to bring up one of the best aspects of this film. It's one that brings everything together, the score. Ludwig Göransson worked with Nolan previously on Tenet, but I think this film really brought him into a light of one of my favorite film composers, because his score makes everything better in this film. It's awe-inspiring, and it really fuels the emotions of the film. One particular track, Can You Hear the Music, is brought up multiple times in the film. Every time you hear it, you get awe, wonder, and at one part, dread. The score is just really well made and well put together, and I love how it amplifies the film.
Now, back to the thing I was talking about earlier. Barbie was a 2023 film directed by Greta Gerwig, starring Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, and much, much more. Just like Oppenheimer, Barbie happened to premiere the same day as Oppenheimer, leading to the internet to do its thing and create a meme that became incredibly mainstream, that is known as Barbenheimer. It was a funny period of time, lots of memes and images came about, lots of great videos. Did it eventually become not fun because companies started getting a hold of it and ruin it? Sure, but weirdly enough, Barbenheimer did a lot of good for both films. I technically participated in it, though I watched them a little late. I was busy the actual weekend both films came out, so I had to watch them a week later. Barbie first on a Saturday and Oppenheimer in IMAX on Sunday the following day, and it was an interesting experience to say the least. Both films left me feeling things emotionally, but Oppenheimer just slightly different. Let's just say at the end of the 3-hour film, I was a changed bird. And yes, that's right, I said 3 hours. Barbenheimer did a lot of great things for both films. As of May 10th, 2024, Oppenheimer has grossed $975.8 million, making it the second highest grossing R-rated film. Which for an R-rated film that is 3 hours long and about the guy who made the atomic bomb, that is legitimately incredibly impressive. Barbie also did really well, and I'll go more in depth with that when I make a video about it. But the fact that this silly trend about how funny it is that those two vastly different films are releasing on the same day caused people to actually watch both and rave about them. Social media is a powerful.
Yeah, critical reception was insane, having multiple standing ovations, constant praise, a lot of people stating that this is Nolan's best film, me included. I absolutely love this film. Audiences everywhere love this film. It's amazing how this movie came about. Now, I could go on and on about this movie, trust me, but this isn't called What is Oppenheimer now, is it? So that is Christopher Nolan's entire filmography as of right now. Oppenheimer has won him a lot of Oscars, a lot of accolades, and has really boosted him to the status of one of the greatest directors of all time. Up there with the greats like Scorsese, Carpenter, or any of the great directors you think of. He is one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director. His work is inspiring, his storytelling is phenomenal. And the fact that he focuses his work on young directors, young actors, young writers is incredible. As of right now, a few months ago, Nolan announced that he will be doing a adaptation, my favorite story of all time, The Odyssey, with Matt Damon playing the infamous Odysseus of Ithaca, along with Tom Holland, Zendaya, Mia Goth, John Bernthal, Lupita Nyong, and as normal Nolan fashion, just a whole list of actors. But I'm gonna have to wait until 2026 to get to see that, but I'm very excited. Now, I would love to work with Nolan in a professional sense. Will that happen? Who knows? It would be great if it did. But one thing I do know is that none of these films compare to Nolan's favorite film of all time, Roderick Rules.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. I've worked on this video for almost 2 years. And why did it take that long? Life, you know. But I just wanted to come up here and say I really appreciate you sticking around. Or if you're a new viewer, thanks for giving me a chance. It's been way too long since my last video. And I promise it won't be longer. The next video I have planned, Silence of the Lambs. Papa Beans himself. So yeah, thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you all next time.